But before he comes, I still need to introduce him for formality, okay? Puay Peng holds the UNESCO Chair on Architectural Heritage Conservation and Management in Asia. He was the professor and director of School of Architecture at the CUHK before he joined National University of Singapore in 2017. And PP said that tonight is a Singapore night because I invited two guests from Singapore. But in fact, for the record, I think PP spends his time in Hong Kong more than his time in Singapore. I think everybody knows that. And he has been involved in over 100 conservation projects in both Hong Kong and Singapore since 2003, and has been appointed to numerous boards and committees, I think both in Hong Kong and Singapore, right? And may I remind all of you that PP is actually one of our founding advisors for HKICON. So it is our great honor to have him here all the way from Singapore tonight to be our guest of honor. And I'm sure he will enlighten us this evening. So let's welcome PP.
Thank you, Wendy, and it's good to be back. Even though I come back very frequently, it's good to be back in Hong Kong, and it's good to be back to the gathering of Hong Kong ICON. And I'm so glad that since my last meeting with Hong Kong ICON 14 years ago, it's still going strong, and it's still doing a lot of good things for conservation in Hong Kong. It's also very good to come back to China Club, and so good to see that everything is still intact despite Sir David's passing away. All the artifacts, paintings, and interior decor, the ambience is still very much well conserved. Today, I'm not going to spend too much time because dinner is coming. So I will probably be using 30 minutes to somehow speak to the converted because most of the things I wanted to say might already have been on your agenda. And I saw some of the slides Wendy presented. Some of the issues had already been covered. What I wanted to really do is not to pass on some new knowledge or new insight, but to remind us of why we are here, to remind us why we are passionate about heritage conservation, tangible or intangible, to remind us of our job and to hopefully allow us to move on. And my main sort of bone in my talk would be sustainability, and I hope we can cover sustainability in people, environment, and nature. One thing that we always like to say is that we are interested in people and we are interested in the community. But what is new, right? We are interested in the environment. We want to be sustainable in our environment. We take care of our own nature, and there's so much that has been done in Hong Kong and elsewhere. What can we do new? So this is probably just a reminder of what else can we do. Social cohesion is something that, in my absence from Hong Kong in the last 7 years, became a very big issue, unfortunately. And when I look from 3 hours flight away in Singapore, I really felt so sad about what had happened. But in our construction of our own identity, are we moving forward? Who are we? Who is our community? Who is Hong Konger? Who is a Hong Konger? And I think we need to really look at that. If we cannot do it in a big kind of umbrella under Hong Kong, we might also be able to do it within communities. Now, obviously, in Hong Kong, we've seen the Blue House project, we've seen the Lai Chi Wo project. Both projects are very, very successful in gathering the community, in making a stand for the community, both locally in Wan Chai and in Lai Chi Wo. And there are several similar projects over the years. But are we doing enough? And how can we engage the community? This is my issue. who is our community. In Singapore, I just want to maybe use one example. May not be an appropriate one, but it's something that I can discuss away from Singapore now. Back in 1980s, late 80s, Singapore designated 4 heritage district or historic district, and those receive the highest form of conservation. So the Chinatown, the Singapore River, meaning Boat Quay and so on, the Kampong Clam and Little India. It is really quite interesting that the management of the districts have been given over from the authority, URA, the government agency for planning and urban design and conservation, to, for example, in Chinatown, the Singapore Tourism Board. We can marvel at Singapore's conservation efforts. I have my compatriot here, so I have to be very careful what I say. We will marvel at the number of buildings that we conserved, right? More than 7,200, so they say. Which is true, okay. And also maybe more than 6,000 shophouses being conserved. But how are we conserving them, and what have we conserved? Are we conserving the building itself as objects? Are we conserving buildings as a facade in the streets? Or are we conserving the district as a living heritage? Right? So these are the questions I'm asking. Chinatown itself is not really Chinatown because people have all moved out. Chinatown itself has no Chinese temple except for one quite far south, which is not included in the district. Chinatown itself has been overrun by restaurants from northeast China, not southeast China, where we all come from. And so Chinatown is a fake Chinatown. That has been said before. I'm not the first one to say it. And the ambience, unfortunately, has already gone. The traditional shops and so on had already gone. Little India, I think, is a bit better because Little India had always been lived in by Indians and a lot of stores and so on. And so the atmosphere is still very much Indian. Kampong Clam is supposedly to be a Malay community. And in Kampong Clam, obviously, you have a mosque and also a former palace of a sultan in Singapore. And further up, you have the cemeteries, very important cemeteries and other mosques, local mosques. But Kampong Clam consists of this main street, Arab Street, which was for Arab traders. And again, it's been gentrified. People are living, so no one really lives in the shophouses except for hotels, boutique hotels, as well as a lot of restaurants and other businesses on the ground floor selling Middle Eastern perfume. So is that part of our heritage or part of our identity? URA was supposed to look after Chinatown, Kampong Clam, and it's located somewhere here, which was in the Jackson Plan, part of the Istana. And they've been trying in recent years to induce a certain atmosphere into Kampong Clam. But some of this, obviously, this is Middle Eastern, or more strictly speaking, Persian, rather than Southeast Asian, including, this main access to the mosque was occupied by hotels, hostels, and restaurants and all that, selling Middle Eastern food. But in recent years, they have started to think about involving the business community because there's hardly anyone living there which are Malay. And so trying to bring together the business community within Kampong Clam and trying to see with this project, One Kampong Clam, trying to bring everyone together in order to shape Kampong Clam as a event space, highlighting the culture of the Malays. And in a way, part of it is really quite successful. We are entering into Ramadan for the Muslim,
and Ramadan festival is held here. The local Muslim are very, very enthusiastic, and this is one of the video that they produce. Our students are working on Kampung Plan as a thesis project. Architecture Festival was held last year in Kampung Plan. But who are we engaging, right? So I'm not saying that this is a bad project. I mean, this is what they can do, what best they can do. But how can we improve on that? Where would be the real Malay who used to live here, or maybe not, or other Malay that may come back to live here? Now, the second point is climate emergency, the carbon content and so on. And we all know that buildings occupy like 40% of the carbon emission, buildings and construction sites. I was quite surprised that in 2022, there's an audit committee who look into, in the UK House of Commons, look into net zero building. And they came up with a proposal which has not been rectified in the Parliament, to say that we consistently recommended that retrofit and reuse be prioritized over new building in order to conserve resources, reduce waste, minimize embodied carbon emissions, and so on and so forth. So we require a circular economic statement for any new projects. And more recently, there was a private member bill sent to the Parliament in terms of whole life carbon and embodied carbon calculation for buildings. Now, this is really quite some sort of exciting advancement in terms of carbon footprints and in terms of our carbon responsibility. And obviously, as we know, there's a lot of different ways of measuring carbon emission, especially in buildings, both embodied carbons as well as operational carbons. And if we can look at the whole life carbon process, there's upfront, embodied, and end of life carbon. Now, a building that we did a study, which went in the speaker later on, is now the conservation architect for the building. For adaptive reuse, we did a study for Singapore's URA to see how feasible it is to preserve this particularly important building in our national identity, even, or in our national identity. This is Golden Miles complex, designed by Design Partnership in 1973, supposedly to form the first of many such buildings in the first or the second CBD in Hong Kong. Sorry, in Singapore. No, I'm mixing up Hong Kong. Sorry about that. That shows that I have an identity crisis. that never happened to me after 7 years leaving Hong Kong, but now, yeah, coming back to Hong Kong, that happened. Right, so it is a project that will signify the beginning of a new wave of development in Singapore since our independence in 1965. And it's a brutalist building, as we all call it, and a very brave sort of typology with commercial, offices, and residential, one stack above another, and facing the sea before all this reclamation. And it's a fantastic building to me, and it's also a building that has a lot of life. And more recently, this is the images. I mean, this looks like a Brunswick Center or Brunswick something in London. I was just saying. Am I right, Roger? Brunswick Center or Brunswick
Square.
Square. Okay, Brunswick Square.
What Brunswick Square Center and Brunswick Square?
Yeah, Brunswick Center. That's right. The shopping mall is on Brunswick Center, opposite the Russell Square tube station in London. But it was supposed to be like this. I mean, so brave new world of Le Corbusier coming to Southeast Asia in Singapore. Unfortunately, only one building was built, and so it's really quite a fantastic building. Over the years, since 1973, the shopping mall have been occupied by a lot of Thai businesses, right? Supermarket, restaurants, food massage, religious paraphernalias, and so on. And so it becomes a little Bangkok because there's a bus stop or a coach stop for taking you all the way to Bangkok, I was told, right? I'm not taking it. But so it became a concentration of Thai food in Singapore. And when we did a report, social value, Cassandra over here did this part. Social value, we put it extremely high because everyone recognized this as a little Bangkok, as a place for Thai food and Thai products. Unfortunately, URA told us, no, how can it be very high? This is just for a small community of Thai and maybe Singaporean. But all Singaporean comes here for Thai food. Right? So they asked us to put down the rating for the social value in some way. Right? But it's a fantastic place. Anyway, notwithstanding that, the building itself is definitely worth conserving. And in our report, Arabs went on to study the embodied carbon cycle. And so look at the structure, the facade, and think about if we retain the elements and the new element, what's embodied carbon. So it was a nice study, and the Minister for National Development came on to also cite carbon, preserving carbon, embodied carbon as one reason for conserving that building. Now the other building that is also we did some study is our new school building. Sorry, the slide has to be changed. It's a school of the Department of Architecture in NUS, built like in 1970s. And we retained the building and did a facelift as well as within the space. But we also did a kind of a carbon study using two systems, two different way of calculating. Now I'm not going to bore you with the details. To look at every element and to make the carbon calculation. And this is something that we did, and we compared the two buildings, SD1 and 3, which are renovated and adaptive reuse, and SD4, which is the new build, to compare the GFA is very similar between SD1 and this SD4, and to compare the kind of embodied carbons and what additional carbons that was given. And also look at a 25-year cycle to look at the carbon emission and so on, the embodied and operational carbon together, right? And in a 25-year cycle, you can see that those that are preserved and adapted for reuse really do not have a lot more carbon than the one that is new, right next to each other. Now this is just as a reminder for us. When we look at modern heritage, especially in Hong Kong, Murray House was very well preserved, perhaps the City Hall very well preserved, but there are a few other modernist buildings in Hong Kong that we really need to fight to preserve. I was, when my last few years at Town Planning Board, I was trying to stop the housing society housing blocks to be preserved, at least one block. Right? I think altogether there are 13 blocks there, and housing society came back time and again over about one and a half years, saying that no, we cannot preserve anyone. No, we cannot preserve. We will do this. We will mark the floor plan on the floor, on the ground in the future. We cannot preserve it. And to me, it's a fantastic design. The floor plans, the whole block, and so on. Why can't we preserve one? And so after I left Town Planning Board, they went ahead and so demolished everything. So they got through the Town Planning Board. That's a lesson for us. I mean, shall we not look at a modernist building and think about preservation in Hong Kong? I got it right, Hong Kong, and to really use carbon emission, the embodied carbon, as the kind of linchpin for preservation. The last one, I think, is also mentioned by Wendy, I think twice at least, is design landscape. Holistic management of design landscape, and to understand comprehensively the values of design and landscape, or cultural landscape, and empowering different stakeholders in the value assessment, as well as planning and strategy for design landscape. I mean, this is school stuff, so I'm not going to go over this. It's a World Heritage cultural landscape, and so on. And we can see that in this document back in 2009, they defined what cultural landscape is and how we can look at cultural landscape. And for us, or for me, conserve buildings and conserve landscape, there are a few things that we can look at, right? Sustainable environment, livability, and wellness. And this is a project that we did. So there's a bit of declaration of conflict of interest. Wendy and May were involved in this project together with Ken Nicholson and Maxime Descarden. I was asked to do this project for the golf club, and my reaction was, what? My golf club, the rich and famous, the wealthy, the privileged class. Why shall I do a conservation study for them? Then I came back to Hong Kong and looked around the site, the golf course, and of course I've been following the story of this returning to government and so on. And I think there's something in there that I perhaps can contribute. And so our team was asked to do this study. And we look at different conventions as well as operational guidelines from UNESCO. And one of them is to look at cultural landscape and the design cultural landscape created intentionally by men, but sort of holistically embracing nature as well as community. And this is something that I thought might be the future for our conservation here in Hong Kong. Before I stepped down from AAB in Hong Kong, Andrew Lam was very interested to look at historic districts and maybe say historic urban landscape, using landscape approach to understand not just the building but the whole context of the building. And cultural landscape should be one of them. And we were talking about cemeteries, we talk about the Hong Kong Park, and many other design landscape that we might be interested to conserve. And so this is something that again is part of the UNESCO statements. But this is our study. We want to establish the heritage value of Funding Golf Course as a cultural landscape. And we look at the whole site with the old course, new course, and Eden course. And we would also like to apply cultural landscape as a methodology for this study, including historic landscape characterization and historic urban landscape kind of methodology. I hope, I'm not too sure, maybe you can correct me, whether this might be the first such study in Hong Kong. Yes or no? Cultural landscape study? Anyone? No? Okay, must be the first one, since you do not know any. Thank you. Right? And I really want to see that dynamic relationship between nature, the built environment, and so on, and to understand what it is. So it is a design landscape intentionally, because at that time, when it was first created, more than 100 years ago, the land was not really cut out, and the land was not really bulldozed over. Right? And so when we look at the site, I mean, it's really a very, very pleasing site. We look at several values. I mean, some of these are really part of our conservation management plan or HIA, but we started to look at cost design value, scenic values, natural conservation values, sustainability values, local values, and we grade them from low to outstanding. We look at all three courses, the old, the new, and the Eden course, and we look at the way the courses are designed. And in the design of golf courses, obviously we go back to St. Andrews and how St. Andrews designed their golf courses. They moved inland from the coast in late 1800s. and so it's quite new in that sense. And when they first designed it, it's a kind of golden age of golf because they kept the terrain, they kept the undulation in the landscape. Because when they started, there's just a bunch of people, retired people who have nothing to do and just playing. No, I mean, I'm kidding. But it's just like, yeah, just play on any field, right? So they do not go in and bulldoze the land and not go in and create particular obstacles to increase all the handicaps, right? No, they follow the land and just making enough sort of dents and all that in order for the sandpit and all that. And so it's a golden age of golf with optimum balance between retained natural features and designer enhancement. Right? So that is 1800 to 1930. Unlike the modern development, especially from the US, I mean, we all know the Americans, right? They just go in, sorry, no offense to any Americans living here, just go in anywhere, in all fields, in all domains, and bulldoze their way, right? So no, this is really, the old course in Fan Lang was designed that way. Was really carefully taking care of all the natural terrain, as well as the tombs, the graves of the indigenous villagers, which is just right next door. And when we went on site, we go around any tombs. There's one very nice late Ming Dynasty tombs from the 15th centuries. You can go around and pick up all the golf balls. So I'm sure the people interned inside the tombs are all very happy with golf playing and learn a few techniques or so, right? And because the community around there were really quite happy with the golf course being in their neighborhood. We are not talking about the buildings, as we know, nature and all the tombs here, as you can see. The connection to the villagers. There's a gate open, and I think after 3 o'clock every day, villagers can come in to play. So Ken actually came in to play a few times on the course, free of charge. Totally, they are like the community is almost like part of the golf club. A lot of the young people in the villages came on to become caddies, and some caddies will become really good players later on. And when I was presenting this to Town Planning Board last October, I also mentioned that was just a few days after the Asian Game, and one of our Hong Kong players won the gold medal in Asian Game in golf, trained here. And so there's a lot of connection, and really it's something that we need to look at. Now, okay, this is all boring stuff, but obviously you know everything is outstanding, almost. And we look at authenticity and integrity, and we also look at what will happen if they continue with their public housing program. Now, obviously, we are not against building public housing. Hong Kong really needs a lot more public housing, but can we do it somewhere else? Because this is really very small site, and the heritage value is so high, and so this is the impact and so on. Right? So the conclusion is that we will probably like to have this as our preserved cultural landscape, and we submitted the dossier to UNESCO Asia Pacific Heritage Award, and lo and behold, we won the second class award, award of distinction, which to me is quite surprising. I mean, I know many people in UNESCO Bangkok, and I didn't expect this outcome. I think it is an outcome that says a lot about the holistic approach to managing this heritage with the landscape, with nature, with people together, and sustainability as well. The course had also won quite a few awards in sustainability because they use their own water. They didn't use the water from the mains. Right? And so all that will be something that we can look forward to, and I hope members here in the future will be engaged in cultural landscape study, or even EQL in Hong Kong, Kowloon City, for example. I'm so sad that part of it will be gone, and other places, and also maybe the cemeteries and all that. Okay, so that's just a reminder for us to move forward, and you have my support. Wendy has my support. The Hong Kong ICON as my support for more conservation efforts and enhance efforts in conservation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to stay on the stage, and I would like to invite Wendy together to bring us home.
Shall we all raise our glass together? To Hong Kong ICON.
To Hong Kong ICON!
Thank you.
Please enjoy, and we will a bit later we will invite another guest speaker to have a sharing on another topic. So please.
The library is very nice. I'm so happy
Thank you.